You see it in the news every single day, right? This constant clash between the world's established rules and the raw exercise of power by nations. Today, we're going to dive right into that conflict. And it all really boils down to this one big question. Is there a global rulebook that everyone is supposed to follow? Or is it all just a massive, high-stakes game where the most powerful players make their own rules? Let's get into it. All right, so first, let's talk about the ideal vision. This is the world as we'd like it to be, a place that's trying to operate based on a shared set of rules, the way we all hope things would work. And that's what we're calling the global rulebook. At its heart, the whole point is to create a stable, organized world, to keep the peace. And the entire system hinges on one really crucial idea, that nations actually agree to be bound by these rules. Okay, so that's the dream. But then there's the other side of the coin, a much, much more cynical take on how the world really works. And yeah, this is what we call the high-stakes power game. The core idea here is that the world is, well, anarchic. And that doesn't mean total chaos with burning cars in the streets. It just means there's no world government, no global police force you can call when things go wrong. So at the end of the day, every country is just looking out for number one, its own survival, its own interests. So you've got these two totally competing visions of the world, constantly pulling in opposite directions. Let's put them right next to each other and see how they stack up. So on one side, you've got the idealists, what we call liberalism in this field. They believe that cooperation, institutions, and laws are absolutely essential to prevent chaos. But on the other side, you have the realists, and they're way more skeptical. They basically see international law as, well, a suggestion. For them, power is the only thing that really counts. A realist would tell you a country will follow the rules only when it's convenient. The moment it's not in their interests, the rules go right out the window. And this quote from a famous realist scholar, John Mearsheimer, just hits the nail on the head. I mean, it really sums it up, doesn't it? For realists, a world of rules is a nice thought, a fantasy even, but it's just not how things work in the real dog-eat-dog world of international politics. So where can we actually see this tug of war between the ideal and the real? Well, there's no better place to look than the UN Security Council. It's pretty much the main stage for this entire fight. Now, the council has these 5 permanent members, the P5. You'll recognize these names, and you'll notice they're basically the winners of World War II. That's a huge deal, because it essentially freezes the power structure of 1945 and locks it in place, all the way to today. But what gives them their real muscle is just one little word: veto. That one word means that any single one of these 5 countries can bring the entire system to a screeching halt. They can kill any resolution, even if every other country on Earth agrees on it. Just think about that. And believe me, this power gets used all the time to protect their own skin or their friends. You've got Russia vetoing anything that condemns its invasion of Ukraine. You've had both Russia and China blocking action on the horrific civil war in Syria. And the US, they've used their veto over and over again to shield allies like Israel from criticism. It's a perfect recipe for gridlock, where power politics just shuts everything down. Okay, so let's get into some real-world examples. Let's look at a few times in history where the global rulebook went head-to-head with a superpower. And, well, you can probably guess who won. First up, let's rewind to the 1980s. And a showdown between the US and Nicaragua. So a new government takes power in Nicaragua, one the US didn't like. So what happens? The US starts funding and training rebel fighters called the Contras to overthrow them. Well, Nicaragua decided to fight back, not with guns, but with lawyers. They took the United States to the World Court. And you know what? They won. The ruling was a bombshell. The World Court, we're talking the highest court on the planet, came down and said, yep, the United States broke international law. Period. For the rule book, for that ideal vision of the world, this should have been a huge victory. But then came the reality check. The US basically just shrugged. They said, we don't accept the court's decision, and then they went to the UN and used their veto to make sure nobody could force them to comply. Just like that, power completely steamrolled the law. All right, let's jump forward to a more recent and probably more familiar example, the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The justification from the US and its partners was all about self-defense and supposed weapons of mass destruction. But here's the key thing. They didn't get the green light from the UN Security Council. And if you ask legal scholars, the verdict is pretty much unanimous. The overwhelming consensus is that the invasion was illegal, a straight-up violation of the UN Charter, the very foundation of that global rulebook.
And the reality? The invasion went ahead anyway. And since then, there has been absolutely no accountability. Not for the countries involved, not for the leaders who made the decision. It's just another textbook case of a powerful country deciding the rules just don't apply to them.
And that brings us right up to the present day with our last case, Russia's aggression against Ukraine. This didn't just start in 2022. It really began back in 2014 when Russia illegally annexed Crimea. The full-scale invasion was a massive escalation, a direct frontal assault on the entire international legal order. And the rulebook response was pretty clear and united. You had widespread condemnation from all over the globe, heavy economic sanctions, and even the International Court of Justice stepping in and ordering Russia to halt its military operations immediately. But you know how this story goes. The reality on the ground is grim. Russia just uses its veto to block any action at the UN. They've totally ignored the court's order, and the war continues. It's a brutal reminder that sometimes all the rules and resolutions in the world don't stand a chance against tanks and missiles. So, after all that, where does this leave us? Well, it throws us right back to that fundamental question we started with, that core tension that just doesn't seem to go away. So what do you think? Is international law this noble, essential dream that we have to protect and strive for? Is it a standard that matters, even when it gets broken? Or is that just wishful thinking? Is it really just a tool, another card for the powerful to play in this never-ending, high-stakes game for global dominance? That's really the question, isn't it?